So what are junior developers worried about? I did 38 Zoom calls with junior developers from across the world, and this is what I found out, and hopefully some of this information might help you. Before we start, I just wanted to do a quick plug for a book called Code is Currency that is coming out in the next month or two. It's my first book, and it's all about how you can have a developer mindset. Even if you don't want to learn how to code, you can still think more like a developer and basically bend the world to your to your needs or your wants, both professionally and also kind of in your personal life. If you're interested or you know someone who's interested, if you just go to codeiscurrency.com and put in your email address, you'll get an email with some early releases and also announce when it comes out. So this is a tweet I sent about 5 weeks ago. Now, how this all came about was I really wish that I would get asked more by junior developers, like, how do we get started as devs? And it rarely happens. And apparently the reason is junior devs just don't want to kind of interrupt more experienced people on the internet, which, is kind of strange and a bit crazy because we've all been in them shoes. And more importantly, everyone thinks senior developers or more experienced developers are really busy. But if they were really busy, then we wouldn't have anywhere near as amount of like open source projects or code libraries or home automation blogs, because people obviously aren't that busy. They can do all that stuff. So typically when this happens, to combat kind of this fear kind of issue that junior developers have, what I tend to do when people reach out, or when I see people post under things like 100 days of code, if people are being a bit disheartened, I just send them a DM on Twitter that says like, look, you're doing well, just keep going. And just that little bit of motivation tends to spur people on. Now, when I do this, the conversation tends to go backwards and forwards, and it ends up typically with someone asking me, how do I get a job in software development? And similar time when I did one last was about 5 weeks ago. I was in a Twitter space, which is Twitter's like audio feature, and the conversation was around discussing junior developers and how they could be supported. And the feedback from people was great, update this on LinkedIn, set up this on GitHub. It was all positive and helpful information. But I always wondered, like, would just kind of a chat with someone more experienced be as or better, help to someone junior, or would it not be useful at all? So what I did is I tweeted out this message. Which basically was saying, like, look, if you're a junior dev and you want a 15-minute chat with someone who's kind of been there, has got the scars, then just send me a DM. Now, I've done this before and no one's replied, and I expected maybe 5 or 10 replies as I'd kind of increased my following a little bit. But it was picked up by some friends and some people I know that have a much larger following. And I woke up in the morning to like 100 retweets, and over the next few days, I would get 135 DMs from people online. And I've only got like 1,000 followers, and I rarely get more than 10 likes on my witty humor or travel posts. But so this kind of, for me, really did explode. Now, currently, I'm traveling the world with my family, and I'm not working, so I have like time. So we were about to enter a 10-day kind of hotel quarantine period. So this idea of picking 10 people from this 135 was kind of contentious, because I would look through some of the messages people would send, and it was kind of like some were just quite sad, like people just wanted to have a chat. So I kind of did the maths, and basically 135 people, 20 minutes chat, 40 hours or 4 hours a day for 10 days. And because I have the time at the moment, I thought, why not? So that's what exactly I did. Like, I arranged 135 phone calls for 20 minutes. And what I did was I sent out a link to a Vimeo video that just basically said, like, look, this is 15 minutes, no small talk, like matrix red pill conversation. We're going to try and get like a tangible outcome in this 15 minutes and give you, something kind of to go forward with, and then potentially a follow-on conversation, but just like no BS. And they would have a 15-minute conversation, and then I allowed like 5 minutes between each meeting to allow for like run over or just like general toilet breaks. And from them 135 DMs, 70 sessions were booked, and of them 70 sessions, 38 people turned up from across the world. So basically, 32 people didn't turn up. And kind of expect an element of like no-shows, and I got a bit frustrated, but then I did have a bit of a privileged learning moment during this experience, which was one in particular. Was a guy from Kenya. We had the session, he turned up late, like 4 minutes left to go. And I was like, what the, like, you don't turn up late to a call. And anyway, he came on, like apologized profusely, was really apologetic. And basically what had happened is the power had gone out in his village. So, just no internet. I felt like a bit of a dick, and it kind of made me realize that, look, not everyone has electricity, not everyone has internet, not everyone has the ability to do things on time. So just a bit of a humbling experience, if nothing else. Now, during these conversations, we talked about many different aspects of software development, of getting jobs, of career progression. And like some people just wanted to chat, others had a plan and they just wanted some direction, like maybe like, how do I go about doing this or that? But most people just needed reassurance. They just wanted to hear from someone who'd been through the motions and to make sure they were on the right track. Or, they were just a bit lost and needed to be pointed in the right direction. Now, I thought, them 38 people turned into quite a few follow-on calls, but I wanted to write something up in case anyone potentially would find the information useful. But in the interest of media, I decided to write it up and also do this video. So hopefully this is valuable to someone. Now, all this stuff is my perspective, so take it with a pinch of salt. If you don't like it, then, also, like, I'm really lazy, so I will always try and shortcut a way to get to the problem in the easiest, simplest way. So a lot of the advice is centered around like hacking the system, not actually following the straight and narrow. So first up, let's go through this breakdown. So the key areas that I would say came up in this conversation were qualifications, portfolio, like networking with other people, like how do you even get a job, being older in the industry and trying to get in, and then how to get honest feedback. So we're just going to explore these now. So first up, do I need a degree? Okay, so it's easy for me to say, as someone who has a computer science degree from a long time ago, to say you don't need one. However, I've hired people, I've helped people hire people, I have friends in the industry who are new, who are old, and in 2022, like, no one really does give a shit about your degree. I can understand why if you don't have one, you would feel less confident, especially if maybe you've been self-taught, if other people around you have got one. But at the end of the day, it's a piece of paper of people just putting in a set amount of hours, like you've put in self-teaching yourself. So I think regardless of how you've learned to code or learn software development, if it's boot camp, if it's a 3-year degree, if it's doing it yourself, like that learning, you just need to show to people how you did it. And also just have the confidence in that way of which you've learned. So just, like, basically just own it, don't feel embarrassed, however it's come about, just kind of really own it. And if you are completely new and you want to learn how to code, there's quite a lot of choices out there. Some of it's quite confusing. The biggest one is like, where do you start? So, you've got things like YouTube, you've got courses on Gumroad or Udemy or Pluralsight, or obviously Free Codecamp is a massive platform. And then things like the more enterprise, like Pluralsight, LinkedIn, Google, MIT, Harvard, that, the list goes on. And then it's, which discipline do you pick? Web, app, front end, back end, machine learning, DevOps, testing. And then we get into the actual technologies, Node, JavaScript, C#, C++, Python, Go, Java. It is a massive minefield. And I wish, kind of a bit of a, I wish there was a tool that could allow developers to basically answer problems, and they would get given and shown different languages at a really basic level, so they could find one that that kind of resonates with them. And I guess that's the kind of learning that I hope someone watching this would take from it, which is not, like React at the moment is the sexy language. Like everyone's hiring for it, everyone thinks you should do it, but you can build pretty much anything you want in C# or in Java that you can do in React. So you kind of have to ask yourself, which language do you feel an affinity with? Because you can learn other languages, but if you get bored, like, you need something that you relate to. So I would just advise you, like if you're thinking about learning, like maybe go into Free Code Camp, do the entry-level course for a couple of languages and just see which one you gravitate towards, more than like forcing yourself to do something that is seen as cool at the moment. Next up we have is the portfolio. So what should your portfolio include? Now, obviously commercial experience is always going to be like kind of front and centered, but the thing to remember with this is like your early work is always going to look crap, you know, to others potentially, but also to you in 6 months' time. You know, it's difficult not to compare yourself to a product like Instagram or GitHub, which is, you know, hundreds or thousands of engineers, you know, across disciplines with UX teams, UI teams, like the whole kind of shebang. Like really try not to compare yourself to a polished multi-billion-dollar product. The key of your portfolio is just to get it out there and get people to see that you understand how to solve problems with code, or sometimes even without. The objective is to show, and don't worry too much about how fancy your website looks. Now, the best way to do this is to build some stuff. Now, you can do this by doing kind of samples on courses like Free Code Camp, for example, but so is everyone else. You know, we want a bit of uniqueness and a bit of like differentiation. So like try and solve problems in your own life. You know, if you've got stuff that just kind of frustrates you and you might potentially want to automate it, then, you know, use technology to do that, but then write it up, blog about it, video, podcast, whatever means you feel most comfortable with. And that will demonstrate that you know how to solve a problem. Now, if you live in a life where you don't have any problems, then first of all, congratulations. But then it's around like finding other people's problems. Now, this can be like local community groups or charities, like family members with businesses, you know, friends. Everyone's got a friend who 100% thinks that their startup's gonna, you know, make it and their idea. Like, but you could build an MVP for them. You know, if you're a developer, like you can find a designer on something like Behance or whatever the cool kids using in 2022, and like build their design. And not only will you get to kind of see how like professional designs maybe work, you also then get to, you can send it to the designer and say, look, I've built it. And if they've got some following or some kind of credibility, like they might refer you to a job, or at worst case, they might promote the work that you've done and the code, and therefore give it a broader reach. Now, finally, on your portfolio, a lot of people miss out, I think, like what is your superpower? So if you think like everyone's potentially done a boot camp or a degree, people might even have some commercial work, they might have some examples of stuff they've built on the side. Like what could differentiate you than other people? And that's where things like, you know, can you speak another language? Like if you can speak Spanish, then you should put this on there, because companies you're applying to might be looking to hire someone to work in a Spain office. If you're into, like, you're really into like home automation, like someone on that development team who's looking through your resume may be thinking, do you know what? Like, I love home automation. I'd love to have someone on my team I can talk about this stuff. And it's not going to get you the job, but it's potentially going to get you in the door, which, you know, is the very first step that we need to do with all this stuff. But the key is you want to try and make a human connection with someone, or ideally everyone in that hiring process, just to get your CV and your resume, and basically to get you into the front of the list. One big part of that is, how do you network? Complex. Complex most of the time, you know, even before we had the current global situation going on, you know, some people are not just energized in networking, you know, they find it quite difficult. Now, you can hack networking a bit as a newbie to the industry. Currently, in-person conferences are limited worldwide, so they might not be possible in your geographic area, but virtual events are happening all over the world. And they're a great way to still build credibility and get to know people by getting involved. Like people think that conferences are a place for you to go and learn. And yeah, you might get a few kind of golden nuggets of knowledge from some of the conferences, but speakers, but it's all about the networking aspect of it. There's two really good ways that I've found that you can get the most out of networking. So first of all, most conferences recruit volunteers, people to, if it's a physical event, people to help with ticket entry, or provide like assistance for speakers, or just to run around like a headless chicken to, you know, help set things up. Now, this also happens with virtual events where, you might get to be a part of the organizational team around scheduling events or sending emails out or some social media stuff. But like the worst case is if you do a bit of help, you're going to get a free ticket to the conference, which, happy days. But the best thing and massively underrated thing around volunteering at a conference is you're in essence staff. So it kind of removes the friction and awkwardness of you walking up to a speaker or an attendee and just starting to chat, because it's kind of your job to go up to them and say like, hey, how's it going? Are you feeling all right? Do you need anything? And in them interactions, like don't do something crazy like go up and say, can I have a job? But just being around these people, asking them what they're working on, like why they're there, how they feel about this talk. Like everyone enjoys talking about themselves. So you can really kind of relax someone in these interactions and get to know them and get to know the industry, and just to slowly build up your network. And you'll also get to see that these people, even though they're speakers on a stage, they're humans and they're not that far kind of further on the line than you are, even as you're volunteering into the industry. Everyone's only a couple of years difference from each other, to be honest. And at the end of the day, like what's the worst thing that can happen? It's a volunteer gig. Worst case, they fire you. It's really not the end of the world. One other thing with conferences, which I never really understand why people don't do it, is if you ever see someone speak with more than 50 people, like after the speaker's finished, like there's a queue of people who want to speak to them post their talk. Now, you're just going to get kind of forgot and taken away with everyone who's asking questions, and they're going to be the person who's speaking is going to be really buzzing and like adrenaline hit. So they're going to forget everything that's happened in the post 5 minutes. What people don't realize is like speakers tend to go to a conference. They don't really know anyone. People sometimes are intimidated to talk to them, but that's the time to get to them. I don't go to them straight before their session, but if they're speaking in the afternoon, like feel free to go up to them in the morning, just have a chat. They'll probably be quite thankful to have someone to actually just speak and just shoot the shit with. And it's in them conversations where you can just slowly build up a bit more of a conversation and understanding. And then if you listen to them talk and they share something that you find interesting, you can re-engage afterwards. But guess what? You're now someone they recognize because you had a conversation beforehand. So again, we're just trying to differentiate you from other people. And finally, as a bonus one, if you're okay with actually speaking at events, then breaking into the conference space can be difficult, but it's kind of worth the effort because it just builds up that kind of credibility of who you are, especially if you're wanting to work within a niche. The key with this is just to do a couple of like local meetup events first, just to get the cogs working. And then when you're ready to hit a more significant event, the way you can get ahead of other people who've been doing it for a while is pick something that no one's really talking about. So I got to speak at NDC London without much public speaking experience because I picked ML.NET, which is the Microsoft machine learning framework for .NET developers. And no one was talking about it. There wasn't even any videos on YouTube. It was really new. And therefore, people who were on the judging committee wanted to hear about it. So they picked the talk, even though I didn't have that much experience at speaking. And then when you get to do these talks, like you're going to increase your network and it's going to raise your profile. It's just kind of a given. And, being part of communities and so conferences will basically create a network, but then how do you find people who are your peers that you can vibe with? You can just, if you're stuck on a problem, you can help each other. And this is where I find local meetups is the way to go. And it's probably the most important thing to take from this video is that in the UK, local meetups are quite widespread. If you do a search on meetup.com or something, you can find stuff all around. And typically, if you're in a semi-tech area, there's going to be multiple things going on. And if there's not, it's a pretty good place to either kick off a meetup of your own for developers, and then you become the host, the founder of that meetup. And again, that is like gold dust for the resume for when you're looking to apply for jobs, because it shows you really love what you do. Now, meetups are also the place where experienced developers will go to find developers to work in their team. They're going to put stuff out with recruiters, they're going to put stuff on the internet, but if you're at a meetup, you're probably going to hear about that job a few weeks earlier that it gets put out, because they want to work with people who are equally want to be a part of these kind of meetup communities and with other developers. So just bear that in mind, that the local meetups are the place to be. And I imagine in this day and age now, with everything that's happened in the last year, online communities are also going to have the same effect. So you may have heard of open source. So let's say you want to get into like JavaScript and you want to understand how like GitHub works. Open source could be like the fastest way for you to do this because there's so many repositories that people have already built, and you can just go on there, you know, fix a bug, maybe even just some documentation change, create a PR, pull request, submit it, and now you've already got a dialogue with, if you know that's a small repository and a small project, you can speak with the owner and get some to and throwing. But you can also like GitHub is owned by Microsoft, and you know, you can submit a pull request for an actual real Microsoft product, and your code might actually end up inside that product that gets deployed, you know, to millions and millions of machines and people around the world, which is, you know, pretty cool. I want to give a bit of a shout out to a guy called Eddie. Eddie he was a GitHub Star of the Year last year. He has a community called eddiehub.org, which is a Discord community of like nearly 5,000 people who are all kind of helping each other with their developer journey. If you're new to development, like this is a great place for you to check out what's open source is all about, but also meet some other like-minded people in a virtual setting, especially if you're somewhere where you can't geographically meet at the moment. Highly recommend it. How do you get a job? The number one question I would get asked a lot, and it would normally start with, I've emailed 100 companies and no one's getting back to me. Now, you know, this fire and spray kind of mentality, you know, like eventually it will work. You know, tech roles are the largest of unemployed roles in the world. People are crying out for developers. It's just circumstantial. That means that sometimes you might not fit for a role due to, you know, geographic, political, or just circumstantial situations. But the maths means like eventually it will work. You might be 73 by the time it happens, or you might end up accepting a role that you don't particularly like because you're waiting for that role to pick you rather than you getting to pick the role. So I'd like to kind of just give you some kind of hacks and shortcuts of what will balance the odds a bit with this. So the biggest hacks I've ever seen is for developers wanting to break into is to contact developers at a company. So say there's a company you really like the look at, or that's hiring at the moment, maybe for a few roles. Find developers on the software team, either, you know, obviously within the confines of the law, like reach out to them through their work email and say, look, you've seen this role, you know, you're interested in it, or you're interested in the company, like, could you have a chat with them? Or if they have a blog, if they do YouTube, if they host a meetup, again, don't go stalkery on the thing and they'll be a dick about it all, but basically create a situation that shows that you're really eager and interested in what this company's doing. And you'll be surprised by how many people will reach out to you. Just think, if you were in a mid-level or senior level and someone came to you and emailed you and said, look, I see the company's hiring, this is my skills, I feel like I'm a good match, but I don't know for definite. I would love to have a chat with you off the record, just so you can see like where I should focus on. Like, you know, most people are not going to say no to that. I'll give you an example. So in my app agency, we were looking to open a first international office. So I scanned LinkedIn, looked for some agencies who were operating like across multiple countries, and I just pinged off a question which went kind of like this, which is, hey, I see that your agency X has been operating across 3 countries in the last 6 years. I've been running my agency now for 5 years, and we've got an opportunity to open up a second office in X country. I heard you speak on this podcast, and I would find your insights valuable. If you have time, if not, I completely understand. Now, I fired that off a few times, worked a treat, got, I think, probably 3 or 4 responses back, which, you know, gave me kind of informative answers. Now, if you're a developer looking for a job, a similar one for you could be, hi, X, I'm a developer working in Vue.js. I watched a talk that you gave on using Vue and form validation, and I actually implemented your example in a contact form on my site for a local football team I'm involved with. Similar to you, I am based in Manchester and wondered if you knew any Vue meetups where I could learn more. Now, that last line where I say about the based in Manchester and is there any meetups, like that's your ask. Now, that could be anything. We're basically just trying to establish with someone, you know, you're a developer working in Vue. So there you go. There's a synergy with the person. You've watched something they've done. So it shows that you're not just blind, cold emailing out to people. You've implemented what they've done, so it shows that like you can do some stuff, and then you want to ask a question. Now, again, don't be creepy, don't be a dick when you do this. Be respectful, understand you may not get a reply, but if you do this a few times, you'll be surprised by how many things will come showing. Now, these things are not going to get you like the job. It's all the other stuff we spoke about that will get you the job. What this will do is this is going to mean that when you're in the room and it's between you and Jane or you and Bob, like they're going to pick you because you have someone on the inside who can vouch for you. Even if they're not on that inside of the company, they might work for a competitor or just another company in the field. If someone came to me and I checked their work and it looked good, and I knew they were interviewing for a friend or a company, within like my community, I'm going to put in a good word. It's just like, it's just what people do. People are human at the end of the day. So I think just don't underestimate human emotion. Now, something that came up on these calls, which I was quite surprised by, which is, how do you compete when you're older and you're wanting to break into tech? I spoke to a lot of people like over 40s who were looking to get started in their professional tech career. Now, software development has this image of hoodies and flip-flops and scooters and ping pong tables and things, and that's changing, and it can feel quite impossible if you're a bit older. Like, how do you break into this area and compete against a 20-year-old who potentially can take less money, has less commitments, is more energy and enthusiasm? What's the edge that someone who's older can do? And the simplest answer is like companies, like tech really is kind of eating the world, as the quote goes. And the more and more now where companies are edging into different areas. So for example, like agriculture tech, like you can hire a 20-year-old developer to build you some code and write some React and do all these different things. But imagine if you could hire a developer who's been a farmer for 20 years, can also code, but also has all this domain expertise about farming. Like, this is the world I believe we're now going to shift into, where you're going to get all these people who have the domain expertise in all these industries who have now happened to learn to code. So now they have an edge over the 20-year-olds who are coming out of computer science degrees or whatever, but can only code. I think it's just the key with this is really just focusing on that you have this as a strength. So don't read the job spec and see like 10 things and go, oh, I can't do 8 of them. Because people aren't going to know that you exist even in the funnel yet. We're not there yet. But whereas what I would do is email the company and say, look, I could do these tech things. I'm a quick learner, blah, 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 all the usual stuff. But I was also a farmer for 20 years. Like, I understand what your customer wants. Like, that shit is gold. Like, they would be foolish not to talk to you. Okay. Now, honest feedback. The most powerfulest word in your professional career is candid. Regardless of what the media tells you, 99% of people in the world are good. Most don't want to be mean or negative, especially friends and family. No one's going to say that you've got a bad idea. And in the professional settings, in most countries, like the laws are set to protect employees or potential employees. So an employer is always going to edge on the side of caution when communicating with you, especially during hiring. They're not going to say, we don't want you because you're crap. They're going to say, we went with someone else just because of their experience and the fit with the team. This is a lovely situation because no one wants their feelings hurt. But when you're trying to get a job or enter a new industry, this is not helpful. Because you need to understand where you need to improve or learn, and the word candid, really can help. Like, personally, like adding candid to my vocabulary, like, changed my life. It sounds crazy, but it had that profound of an impact in how I communicate with people, both professionally and personally. So I'll give you an example. When you ask for someone's advice, like you can say, like, can you give me some feedback? Or you can say, can you give me some candid feedback? Because what you're saying when you use the word candid is you're giving them permission to disagree with you and say something negative without recourse. And you can double this up. So not only can you say the word candid, you can also say the negative. So remember, people will be friendly and they find it easier to agree with you than disagree with you. So for example, if someone says to you, do you like my hair? Like, it's hard to say, no, I don't. Versus if you say, I've had my hair in this style, but I'm not sure, what do you think? Like, you're permitting the person to say their honest opinion because you're already saying you doubt it. So they then have to disagree with going, oh, it looks amazing. Like, they're disagreeing with you to say a positive. So you know it's going to be more genuine. If they say, oh, yeah, I think you could do a better job, like, they're agreeing with you on a negative. Like, people don't do that. So you can get a much more honest opinion. So in the tech space or looking for a job, people will typically ask, can you give me feedback on my portfolio? Again, because of laws and just people being nice, they're going to say something useless. Whereas if you said, I feel my portfolio could be better, and therefore could have got this role, I would like to improve it. Could you give me some candid feedback on areas of which I can focus on? Like, you're acknowledging that it maybe isn't good enough, even if you believe it is. You're asking to improve it. You're asking for candid feedback on where you should focus. This line is going to save you so much hassle and is going to get that honest feedback from people. And that's it. That was basically the summary of the conversations that I had. And I'm so glad to the 38 people I got to speak to. It was an amazing opportunity to speak to all, and I can't look forward enough to our follow-on conversations. I'm hoping that in a few days my internet won't be crap, and therefore we can have our follow-on chats. And I've decided, because this has been so impactful and so helpful, and because so many people reached out so quickly, I've got a bit of an experiment of something I'm going to launch, and it's called areyouadev.com. And basically, it's a way for junior developers to, in essence, book a 20-minute conversation with someone more experienced in the industry, just to chat about anything. You know, it's not mentoring necessarily, it's not coaching, it's just a conversation with someone who's been there, got the scars, that you can just chat with. So if you are interested, if you're a junior dev, just email dev@areyouadev.com. And if you are someone who's more experienced and you could offer 20 minutes a month to chat with someone, then just email at the website at areyouadev.com. That would be great. Have a great day. Until next time.